Good evening. Welcome to the Marquette City Commission meeting for Monday, June 25th, 2012. Could you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Clerk, could you please call roll?
Yes, Your Honor. Mayor Pro Tem DePietro.
Here.
Commissioner Nemi.
Here.
Commissioner Ryan.
Here.
Commissioner St. Ange.
Here.
Commissioner Snyder.
Here.
Commissioner Stonehouse. And Mayor Kivala.
Here. All right. Commissioners, any changes to the agenda for tonight? Commissioner Nemi?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to add one item, a discussion on a request for amendment change for homeless shelters, amendment change to amendment to the zoning ordinance. And also I'd like to suggest that we move items 10 and 11 bids for construction material testing and water supply materials to the consent agenda. There was competition for this, and we're awarding to the low bids or the best, most qualified firm. I think those are pretty routine. And finally, I'd like to suggest that we move the presentation of the Upper Peninsula Children's Museum Explainer of the Quarter to just before the public hearings. And the homeless item, if we do move the things, I would request that that be item 10.
All right. So we got a few things there. Do we have support? Commissioner Ryan?
I'll support the motion.
Okay. Why don't we vote? All in favor say yes.
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 Opposed? Okay, so we've got number 10 as homeless shelter.
Zoning amendment change.
We moved 10 and 11 to the consent agenda. And we've moved item number 4 up to the beginning because we have a couple of public hearings that may take a while. Any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, just a couple brief announcements. We've got another big event coming to Marquette this weekend, and that's the first ever Marquette Bike Jam. All kinds of fun races. People need to be careful. I guess that's the most urgent thing. There's going to be a lot of bikers on a lot of public streets. So Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, just watch out for bikers. They're going to be all over, just like the Model A's were. Also, we've got several openings, and I'm not going to read through all of them. I do that every few meetings, but one I want to pay particular attention to, and that's the Regional Rec Authority Business Plan Ad Hoc Committee. And we've got one member, our only member here tonight, that we're going to introduce, but we really need 2 more volunteers in the community. This is the group that comprises Chocolate Township, Marquette Township, and the city of Marquette, looking to pull our recreation assets together. And this is a group that's going to work on kind of putting the I guess floor plan in place as to how we're going to do that. And it's very important. The other communities have locked in their people, and we have not gotten a full slate. So anyone with any interest certainly can contact any one of the commissioners here or go to the city manager's office for details. That's all I've got for announcements. Again, we're going to move to number 4 first, which is Upper Peninsula Children's Museum Explainer of the Quarter. Ms. Lauren Anderson, or Alexander, could you please meet me at the lectern? Come on in, I won't bite, I promise. Lauren, what we have for you is a certificate of appreciation presented to Lauren Alexander, Outstanding UP Children's Museum Explainer of the Quarter. So on behalf of the City Commission, I want to thank you for your volunteer work and present this to you. And we're going to let Uncle Jim say a few things.
Stay there.
Don't go off.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. Lauren's kind of a fixture. She's been with us several years. Her brother John won the award, I think, 9 months ago. And up until an hour ago, Lauren had no idea this was going to happen. So we had a birthday party for her at the museum with a cake and special foods that she loves. And then we let her know that she had to stay and close the museum and clean up and throw out all the trash. And why? I said, well, we have to go and see the mayor in about an hour's time. So here we are. Sorry about the surprise, but I'm glad you're here. So this is Lauren. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to number 1, which is a public hearing, proposed brownfield plan for 857 West Washington Street. City Clerk, do you want to read the background?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. The Veridia Group has expressed interest in establishing a mixed-use development for property they own at 857 West Washington Street, the site of the former Sara Lee Bakery. Developing the property requires infrastructure improvements, especially in terms of providing parking, which does not make a full development financially feasible without public support. Veridia was informed by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, MEDC, that they would qualify for a state grant or loan to develop the property, but would have to first have an approved brownfield plan in place to demonstrate local support for the project. At their meeting of May 17, 2012, the Marquette Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, MBRA, voted unanimously to approve the development of a brownfield plan and Act 381 work plan for the Veridia Group at 857 West Washington Street, and they authorized the authority's brownfield consultant to prepare the draft plans. The MBRA also approved the draft plans at their meeting of June 7, 2012. The City Commission reviewed this at their meeting of June 11, 2012, and scheduled a public hearing for this evening. In keeping with the requirements of Public Act 381, the City Clerk has placed the appropriate notices in the Mining Journal, notified local taxing jurisdictions, and prepared notices to the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, and Mega Board. In an effort for the Mega Board to in order for the Mega Board to consider this at their meeting of August 22nd, the City Commission would need to approve the brownfield plans following this evening's public hearing. Fiscal effect as outlined in the Brownfield and Act 381 work plans. Recommendation: following a public hearing, consider the Veridia Group's Brownfield plan and Act 381 work plan for 857 West Washington Street. If approved, adopt the resolution approving the Brownfield plans and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the resolution. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
All right, we're going to start off with a presentation by the applicant, and following that, we'll open the public hearing. So, okay, we can start with Sherry.
Thank you, and good evening. And thank you also for providing the public hearing for this very fine project, which I think you will find exemplifies why it is that we have a Brownfield Authority. And you've seen the review in the past at the former meeting. We also have with us this evening our chair and other members of our Brownfield Authority. And I would like to introduce Mr. Bob Mahaney, who is the person in charge of this fabulous project. You do have a resolution in your packet, and we ask for your support. Thank you. Mr. Mahaney.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Sherry. Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners, City staff, public, thank you for the opportunity to present this plan to you. We did a presentation at the last City Commission meeting and acknowledging that this is intended for a public hearing and not just for us to be up here going through and rehashing what we've already described to you, but to give just a brief recap for the public's sake or others that were not here. What we'd like to do for you is John Majewski, our architect, who's developed these wonderful plans, is here with me. I've asked John to give you a brief recap. He can describe the project and a lot of the rationale behind it far better than I can. And then after John speaks, I'd like to just highlight a few items, and then we'd like to have Mr. McClellan, the Brownfield consultant, come up and wrap up. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm John Majewski with Majewski Architects. Our office is in Evanston, Illinois. And tonight I'd like to go through this relatively quick because I know some of you have already seen this, so I don't want to have to go through it too much. But because it is the public hearing, I do want to have an opportunity to at least hit on the high spots of some of the development and really what we're proposing. I think one thing to keep in mind is that this is continually evolving, but it's really settled down quite a bit. But I think as you'll see the project over time, as we go to the Plan Commission, we go through all the steps that we'll have a lot of evolving pieces that will change. Fundamentally, I think we've got a very good, solid plan in place, and it's really a project that we wanted to be very pedestrian-oriented, so that was a really important part of this site. And as I walk you through it, there was just many wonderful things about the site that really aren't evident to you today because of the former bakery that was there and the fact that it's basically desolate at this point. But to really make that site work well, those are some of the steps and things I'm just going to run through for you tonight. First of all, the location, we think from a traffic perspective, really has been something that's been overlooked for a long time in Marquette. It's a really great connection between the downtown area, which has no ability to grow anywhere but towards our site. The lake is there as a wonderful attribute, but you can't develop further that direction anymore, so any future development is going to happen this direction. And as the township and other development within the city happen over on the other side of town, what's really left in between is this wonderful site and this wonderful opportunity. The fact that it tees right where Lincoln Avenue comes in is really critical for traffic, and we really believe that it ties us into Northern Michigan University, the hospital, the medical center, and obviously the other things in the other communities that are really right around that area. I did want to point out that one of the things that Bob first said to me when it came to architecture was that he was very interested in picking up on some of the iconic architecture that's already within the city. These are three great buildings. Actually, when I graduated from high school and went to Northern for 2 years. And while I was working at Northern, I worked for Link Poley. Some of you might remember him from a ways back. And these are three projects I actually worked on. My very first project, I was the clerk of the works for the Marquette County building. And that was kind of awkward because I had to make sure my father-in-law was being paid enough money. So it was kind of a strange situation at the time. But we did want to pick up, and the primary thing we wanted to pick up, and it's not only somewhat the historical character, but a lot of the massing, the level of detail, and primarily the use of sandstone and brick. So that was something that was very important to Bob, and that's something we wanted to express in the project. Initially, the idea, we went through many stages of development in looking at the overall site. We looked at putting the development all the way up against Washington. We looked at making it a complete courtyard. We looked at dividing it into different pieces. But we kept coming back to the idea that there was really a strong central access on Lincoln Avenue. We can't deny that. There's going to be traffic coming down Lincoln. We literally want to be able to resolve that traffic as it comes through the site. And what we decided was we wanted to have the entrance points into the site as far away as we could from the signal. So right now on either end of the site, the east or the west side, you'll see there's an access point. That is intended to be the main inflow into the development. And then as you go through the site, you'd either go to the rear, which I'll get to, and that would take you to the below grade parking, which is by far the most majority of parking that we have, or you'd be able to exit back out the site and go through a central access point back onto Lincoln Avenue. That way the traffic is working as it's leaving the site right where it can be signaled, so we'd obviously be proposing to change that from a 3-signal configuration to a 4-signal configuration. We also really wanted the idea that this would be kind of a downtown project, but it had to also be somewhat of a suburban project. So we had to respect the fact that if people couldn't see that there was some parking available, they wouldn't believe that there was actually things going on within the development. So we do have a small number of spaces sprinkled throughout the site, and there's about a total of, I think, 98 that are on surface parking. But again, the vast majority sits below that rear long building that you see at the back portion of the site. You'd access that by heated ramps that would take you down, so we wouldn't have to deal with the snow. We have much better configuration for the sloping to allow you to go down into that area. And I think it would be probably Marquette's really only actually enclosed parking. So although it would be tempered, that's the key word here, is it's tempered space parking. In the middle of the winter, it'll still be at a low temperature. The parking is located below the building. So here we're just showing you what happens at phase 1. Here you can see the very lowest level of the parking as it kind of stretches right across the whole site at the very back underneath the largest building. These are just the sections through the parking so you can have an understanding of the overall length, how that ramp works. because we're parking on surface above the lower level parking, and we're also parking below it. And there are 2 levels of parking that you can see that go below the larger building at the back. The way we've configured it, it's phased so that it can be built and have parking inside in each phase. It's kind of complicated, but it actually worked out very, very simply. This gets you a whole view around the site. Again, I think it's really important that when we thought about the massing, we wanted to respond to the linear bike path. We think that that's a really important feature of this site, and it's something that I think a lot of people might turn their back on, but we saw it as an opportunity. We also see it environmentally as an opportunity, because although we show a lot of pedestrian-oriented spaces on the front side, as I would call it, of our site, we are envisioning a large plaza area on the back side. So there'll be something like a restaurant would have the ability to have outdoor seating to overlook the linear path and the bike path. People going back and forth would be able to go up and down via stairs. It is 100% accessible, so there would be an access points that would take you into elevators to come up and down. But we primarily have a level change from the main first floor on the front of the building to 1 level lower where the linear path is along the back. So as we talked about this development, what was really important is that it could be real. I mean, that we really could do this and that it would make sense. We're obviously coming out of a very hard economic time, and how could somebody even possibly envision building a project of this size and magnitude? And the way is to really break it into pieces that make sense. So I'll walk you through the first 4 phasing parts to the site. There's a little flexibility in the way that that might go. The intention is exactly the way we're going to show it to you tonight. I'm going to rotate clockwise. That's the way we anticipate doing it, but you could also go counterclockwise. So the first phase would be this larger building, which is envisioned as a bank building with office space. It has on-surface parking, but it also has a component of lower level parking, so there would be indoor parking for this. That has access via a temporary ramp across the back side of the site, which you can see on the lower part of that image, or that image over there. The second phase would be built next to it. All of the infrastructure at the intersection would have already been completed during the first phase. Now that the second phase can be built, it's envisioned to be a slightly smaller building with retail on the first floor and office space up above. It has access points all the way around it, and again, it has access on the other side to its lower level parking. Then we'd see phase 3, which is a smaller of the buildings that are on the back, because the atrium space is not shown on it, and it has basically 4 levels. The first level is envisioned to have primarily retail, especially up against the inside or the front Washington Street side of the site. But there is the possibility across the back that there could be a restaurant, other uses, or even office space if it wanted to have access to a terrace. Then in the 4th phase, we would actually build the atrium space, which is envisioned to be a public space, but it's part of the development. And it would be an enclosed space. It would have hours that would be used at certain different times of the day, because you'd want to make sure that it's a safe and secure environment. But it really is envisioned to be a public space that's something that we really envision as a winter garden, that it obviously would work well in the summer, but during the winter months, I know which go very long here, we wanted to make sure there's a space that people could get to, since we can't use all of the outdoor terrace space at that time. So we get back to see the entire site as it's completed. When we've talked about this, almost all of the fronts of the building have enough room that if we wanted to have an outdoor cafe on the Washington Street side, or people wanted to have outdoor seating, or an activity that was associated with their retail space, we wanted to make sure that we had just enough room to do that. So that is a part of all of these different spaces that we're showing. This just shows you kind of the massing of the site as you go around it. So here's the first phase building as we envision it. Here you can see the second phase building built. All of that's happening up on the front. The wonderful part I think about this is that development can remain active and under intensive use, while the last phases are built at the back and not affecting as much the front, but obviously there'd be construction going on. Then we'd build phase 3 and finally end up with phase 4. This is phase 1, the very first building as we envision it. You can see the larger massing, the lighter color stone is sandstone, and then the field brick, which you see on the round elements, really pick up on some of the brick on some of the buildings I had shown you previously. It's probably going to be something a little bit more in a terracotta color. And one of the things that we wanted to do, especially off the Savings Bank building, was pick up on those round corners that the Savings Bank building had. So all of our buildings have probably some of the best corners that you could have, but with office space, you can imagine that would be a wonderful thing to have. And this is just a new image that we're creating. This is all part of what we'll be able to eventually do, is walk you through the entire development. We no longer design buildings or draw buildings in 2-dimension. We actually design them in 3-dimension now. So that makes it really a wonderful thing to show you and to be able to walk you through it. It's not just like a model, but it's actually, we can take you on any path that might be needed as we go through the development. So we think for the Plan Commission, it'll be a wonderful tool for them to see the development. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mac, I think, or Bob. Are you going to summarize?
Thank you, John. I just wanted to quickly highlight what we view as some of the benefits of the project, and in no particular order. We're up on the first bullet point benefit that we see is that this project will clean up a blighted industrial site on a major thoroughfare. Is that working? Okay, here we go. We'll remove a functionally obsolete building. As you might recall, the building has been deemed functionally obsolete by the city assessor. Current property taxes on the entire 3-acre plus parcel is $11,000 a year. It develops a vibrant, high-density, mixed-use urban center, and I think John demonstrated that pretty well, the potential that the site has and the type of activity that we envision here. The word vibrant keeps coming to the top of my mind. A number of you have heard me say this before, but I really believe this. I think this project has the opportunity to really change our definition of where downtown Marquette's boundaries are. We can redefine, we can expand what downtown Marquette is. I think it can serve as a bookend, if you will, to what's to the east end of Washington Street, and it can be the catalyst for some pretty transformative change for the positive along Washington Street. The next point is public parking. This would provide public parking in an area of town that presently doesn't have any public parking. And I realize that today one might say, well, is there a need for public parking right there? I think when we get this development done and when we encourage the pedestrian accessibility and whatnot, and try to develop a gateway, if you will, to both the linear park to the south, provide the linkage to the residential areas to the north. There's a lot of opportunity here for the public to use the parking. Obviously, that parking space is going to be critical to our tenants. There's simply no way that we can develop this kind of high-density use on this size, on 3 acres, without some rather significant parking. Phase 1 has already attracted businesses that are looking to grow. In fact, those businesses are either looking to move into the area new, or they're existing businesses that are doing that are in our area but are growing, adding staff. Some of them are already adding staff in anticipation of the Phase 1 building being constructed. And that, of course, is job creation, both construction jobs. I'm not going to try to peg a number. I can tell you that in Phase 1, there's approximately 15 to 20 jobs that have been identified amongst the businesses that are going into that phase. But beyond that, it would be pretty much conjecture at this point. Excuse me. Mac will speak to this better than I can, but this project should significantly increase the city's tax revenues generated from the site. He shared with me one number that I'd like to share with you. Phase 1, over 30 years, if we were to do just Phase 1 only, it would generate $4 million of property tax revenues. Is that correct, Mac? If we do all phases, net of the brownfield, in other words, take your gross property taxes, subtract out the brownfield recapture that goes back to fund the infrastructure and site development work here. All 4 phases done, net of the brownfield, nets $10 million over those same 30 years. Did I say that right? All right. We are not asking for the city to bond or fund this project. And lastly, as John explained, we think that's a tremendous pedestrian link right now from the neighborhoods to the north of Washington down to the linear park, and provides great access to the linear park for our tenants. And I'll share with you that we met today with a prospective tenant, and one of the first things that they picked up on, one of the reasons that they wanted to talk to us, they view that linear park accessibility as a real positive with their workforce. And I thought that was very interesting. I was very pleased to hear that comment from them. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mac to wrap up our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. I was going to just point out one thing, Bob, because I didn't have a chance to quite do it. If we were to only actually build phase 1, and I think this image is a good one, and actually part of phase 2, we would need the rest of the site for parking. So I think it's just important to understand that the real density from this entire project comes from the underground parking. So I just wanted to point out so you'd have a graphic sense of how much could be built if the underground parking was not provided.
And one last thing from me. After Mac finishes his presentation, we'll be here to answer any questions you might have. I appreciate your time, consideration of the project, and we look forward to working further with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be here. Mac McClellan with Atwell Mobby. I'm the Brownfield consultant for the Marquette Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. I know the mayor was excited about hearing my presentation again, but I'm not going to do that. So I'll just leave it with a couple of brief points. That this project before you today is consideration of a Brownfield Plan Act 381 requires the governing body, the City Commission in this case, to hold this public hearing and to approve the Brownfield Plan for the project. The Brownfield Plan envisions, as was mentioned, a pretty extensive development. It expands the revenue pie, but takes a slice out of that pie to pay for some of these extraordinary costs that make the project possible. As Bob had mentioned, is that only phase 1 would be possible without the support. To achieve that density requires underground parking, and that's the majority of the expenses being covered under the Brownfield Plan. So that investment can yield an additional $6 million for the taxing jurisdictions. And after that point in time, after those dollars are paid off, there's $1.3 million that this property is going to generate in taxes. It now generates $11,000. So a pretty significant investment on the part of the public and on the part of the private investment group as well to generate that kind of opportunity for jobs and for property tax values. One point I wanted to follow up on at the last meeting on June 11th, Commissioner Nemi suggested or identified the opportunity to include some portion of the dollars into the local site remediation fund, which is a great tool under the Brownfield Plan to set aside some tax capture dollars to be able to deal with contaminated sites or functionally obsolete sites or blighted sites throughout the community. It generates that kind of fund, a revolving remediation fund to do that. The Brownfield Plan before you has been amended to reflect that, and we have used the same formula as in the Founders Landing, 2.5% for years 6 to 10, 5% from years 10 to 15, and then 7.5% for the next 5 years, and then recovery up to a potential of $2.9 million for that local site remediation fund. So a pretty fantastic asset as well. That action or that amendment was approved by the Brownfield Authority at their recent meeting, June 14th, I believe it was. So, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I hope that was adequate and brief.
Do you have any questions right now for Mac? I don't see any, Mac. We may call you back up if we do. All right, thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing, and we'll open the public hearing right now. If there's anyone wishing to address the commission, if you could please stand at the lectern and give your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Lois Ellis with the Lake Superior Community Partnership at 501 South Front Street in Marquette. I'm here to offer support for the proposed project that Viridia Group has outlined for you this evening. You know, the tools you have before you are very valuable in dealing with some of these properties that are difficult to redevelop. They somewhat level the playing field so that this can be treated as a greenfield site that doesn't have those added costs to develop. So we appreciate that you're considering that tool to help alleviate this property and some of the challenges that it takes to redevelop it. Also before you tonight, you have another exciting project, the food co-op expansion. These are wonderful opportunities and great enhancements for the city. And I do believe that they can both be catalysts for further development in the city. So I thank the Commission for taking time to review these projects, and I hope that you will assist these development projects with the requests that they have before you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. Anyone else?
Good evening. Yorma Lankinen, 8 Marquette Drive. I do again encourage that you would consider the group's request. It appears to be a fabulous enterprise. It will clean up that end of the community. Same thing as with Founders Landing. It was very unsightly with the soda tanks and railroad and all kinds of other miscellaneous items, and now it's really a jewel into our community. And on the other end of the community, at the opposite end, it would make equivalent sense to do this as well. So I really encourage for you as a commission to have this go forward and make the city as exciting as it is right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Daniel Torres, 221 West Nicolay. My standard opening line, I always look at this with the multiple hats that I have the pleasure of wearing here as a resident of Marquette, as a property owner in Washington Corridor and downtown, and a business owner. So I try to look at something like this from all those perspectives, and actually one more hat that I'm wearing as a member of the Brownfield Commission. And really all four of those parts of me wholly support this project. I'm very excited about it. I agree with Lois that I think this has the opportunity, presents the opportunity to expand what we know now as the downtown commercial district, and I see that as nothing but good. In fact, I've already had discussions with Viridia as far as potential space for some future business development that I might be interested in. So I'm hopefully going to put my money where my mouth is. I mean, I feel that strongly about it. I like anything that makes the city even a little bit more competitive with what's going on out on the highway. I think, I still scratch my head with some of the businesses that I see that have missed the opportunity to come into the city. When I look at the crowd that they're trying to draw, I think they would have much been better served in our city limits because that's where the populace is. And I think one of the reasons they haven't done that in the past is because they don't really have the projects to look at and say, hey, this is a great opportunity. And I think we have that with Founders Landing, and I think we'll have that with this property as well. So wholly supportive, and I hope you all are as well.
Thank you, Dan.
Frank Jeff Verito, 350 East Ridge, Marquette. These are my opinions. The concept and design before us are very appealing. They do not look cheesy like a lot of the recent developments that we're seeing down along our lakeshore. I just wish that we could have had more of this type of design down there as well as on West Washington Street. The connection between the path and Washington Street is extremely well conceived. I'd like to see the atrium have the maximum hours of use possible to promote this connectivity. One thing that our city has lacked for quite a long time, and we've had a lot of trouble in the past maintaining, is a viable coffee shop, that's large enough and maybe a one-of-a-kind. Could be a Starbucks maybe too, for all I care. But we definitely need a nice, affordable coffee shop in town. And this project seems extremely conducive to providing something like that in the future, so long as the rent isn't too high. The development before us, if constructed and as pictured, would greatly enhance our community and provide a viable transition from West Washington Street to downtown. One area of concern, though, is that the last time this architect appeared on the scene 13 years ago regarding the lakeshore site, a fiasco ensued that divided our community, the effects of which we still feel today. And that project never achieved anything like the fruition that it was promised. Promises were downright broken. You should have been here. I don't know who was here then, but it was an absolute mess in this chamber. Tonight's presentation appears much more promising than what we saw for the Lakeshore site 13 years ago, and is also much better suited for the site. We also trust that the architect is keeping better associations as well these days. Be careful, though. As the Who song goes, don't get fooled again.
Thank you, Mr. Veritol. Anyone else wishing to address the commission? Seeing none, commissioners, we'll go to discussion and/or a motion. Commissioner Ryan?
Well, to get things started, I'd like to move we approve the plan and adopt the resolution and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the resolution.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have support by Commissioner DePietro. Commissioner Ryan?
I want to make it clear that I don't think this is something that we hand out without a great deal of thought. And I think everyone sitting at this table has put a great deal of thought into this. These are not given out, they're given out very judiciously. Every time somebody wants to make an improvement in our community, it's not going to qualify for some kind of special tax treatment. But looking at what's happening here, I believe this is a model of the kind of thing this program can be used for. The things I look at specifically are the fact that we have a building that's functionally obsolete, which will be torn down as part of this process. I think more importantly is the fact that a major part of the funds will be used for the construction of that parking structure. And that really changes the dynamics of the whole lot. As was pointed out here, without that parking structure, we wouldn't be able to build, they wouldn't be able to build buildings of this type. Probably maybe one, or I think somebody said 1.5 buildings. So instead of an investment of perhaps $30 million, we'd be looking at an investment of maybe $5 or $6 million. You just couldn't do this kind of high density development without the parking structure. So I think the fact that these funds will be available for the parking structure, for removing the building, and for dealing with some of the specific issues on that site make it worthwhile. You know, I guess the way I look at it is several things could have happened there. Somebody could have bought this and turned it into a warehouse, which is probably the last thing we'd like to see happen. It doesn't improve the site, it doesn't improve the area, and it certainly doesn't improve the tax structure. A more typical development would have been to perhaps build a building and use much of the site for parking. But instead we have this very creative idea of creating some underground parking and allowing for some high density development. So that's why I believe this is a good project.
Thank you. Commissioner DePietro?
Thank you, Your Honor. One of the things I'd like to thank is the Marquette Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. They put many hours in, and also with the expertise of having Mac McClellan here from Travis City. But one of the things that they studied and looked at was the Brownfield plan, and that it meets all the Requirement Act of 381 and constitutes a public purpose of a job creation, increase private investment and economic development, and increased property tax value. And I thought that was very important to get all this into a package like this. You don't see that very much. And so this is one of the reasons I wanted to support this. But I also wanted to make sure that I thank you people and the developer for putting all this investment into this area. So I thank everybody involved with this, and thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Other comments? Commissioner Nemi?
I have some comments and a question. I'm not sure who to address this to, Mac or the developers, but I like the fact that we're not going to use public funding to do the infrastructure projects, but the parking ramp, is that going to be privately owned at the end of it, or is it going to be publicly owned?
If you could at the lectern, Mac.
Yeah, I think the concept, and there may be an addition to this, is that initially there's a agreement for public ownership, but that it would be operated privately, paid for, all of the operation done privately. It depends a little bit on the legislation, but right now the idea is that there might be an agreement that for a lease purchase arrangement, and that over time it would be held privately.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
Right. I support this project. I think it's, at worst, we're going to have a continuing blighted building there that's never going to even, reach the status of an ugly warehouse. And I think it's an amazing development. And I like the fact that we're not investing in a lot of public improvements that are going to be lodestones around our neck for forever and ever. And I think it's going to, provide a real benefit to the city. And also I like the fact that we're going to be able to get some of the funding to deal with some of our other brownfield concerns, and throughout time instead of at the end of the project. So I would support this.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Stonehouse?
Just a couple of thoughts, if we can take a trip down memory lane. I remember as a student here at Northern when the coal field still existed, when the old coal pile and coal dock. And then I remember when that suddenly became a city park and all the green space. And then I remembered all of the changes that occurred around that park. The apartments that came up, the change to the Ellis&I building, the improvement with the restaurants, the change of the various buildings that used to be the back end facing the lake now kind of became a second front end facing the lake. And I remember Founders Landing, obviously, as that becomes an ongoing project. But all of that started because of one good thing, changing the park into the park from the old coal dock. And I look at this potential as much the same. When you look at that end of town, and it is a little bit blighted, and that building has really got, obviously, some functional problems to it. It's a disaster in any way you choose to look at it. I look at that structure across the street that somebody has unfortunately let go to rack and ruin. And I think as this project gets underway, the potential of it changing the game for that area of town and bringing everything up with it is certainly very dramatic. And from that standpoint alone, regardless of any of the other good things that will come of it, I certainly support the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Schneider?
Well, I concur quite a bit with what was said this evening. I think the creativity and use of that space is something that end of town has really needed to see for a while. I think that it will expand downtown and really provide a lot of opportunities, both for businesses and residences that we're looking forward to. So I definitely support it. That being said, I have received a number of citizen concerns about development in general in our community, and a lot of feeling that developers will tend to ask forgiveness than ask permission. And so there is concern that as things move forward, that something will change. And I know that the public is hoping that the developers are upfront with everything ahead of time so that, 10 years down the road, they're not looking at it saying, where did this come from? Why do we have to deal with this? This isn't what we thought we had agreed to. I've received a number of emails about that. I also, hope that there's some consideration about moving towards not necessarily LEED certification, but at least some qualifications in LEED as far as energy efficiency and sustainability. One of the things that was mentioned at the last meeting that we had in discussion on this was that the lifespan of the building is roughly 75 years. And to me, that seems awfully short. We have a lot of buildings in our town that are well over 100 years. And 75 years for this big of an investment is short, and I would like to see it aimed for a much longer lifespan than that, hopefully. But, besides those concerns, I really do think it's a wonderful and creative use of the property, and I look forward to it moving along.
Thank you. Well, I'm certainly in support of this as well. You know, when the bakery closed down a couple of years ago, all I could envision was 30 years from now, pigeons roosting in that thing, you know, much like the orphanage debacle we're dealing with. So I think, you know, the plan itself is an outstanding plan. It's an investment in our community, and communities need to do that from time to time. Many years ago, there were people sitting in these chairs that decided to invest in our downtown and create a TIF district, and you see now what we have downtown, well worth the investment. We're also looking at a developer that has a proven track record in this community of doing quality projects and doing what he says he's going to do. So I have confidence in that. And last but not least, I think it sends a message to other people looking to develop that we're open for business in Marquette. We'll welcome your projects, we'll work with you, and we'll do what we can to put good projects in the city. So I'm very happy and hope they get started soon. So with that, City Clerk, do you want to call a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Mayor Pro Tem DePietro,
Yes.
Commissioner Nemi,
Yes.
Commissioner Ryan,
Yes.
Commissioner St. Ange,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Stonehouse,
Yes.
and Mayor Kivala.
Yes. Motion passes unanimously, so good luck. All right, next up, we've got public hearing, possible commercial rehabilitation district, 500 and 502 West Washington Street. City Clerk?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Background. On April 13, 2012, Matt Goujon, General Manager of the Organic Food Cooperative of Marquette, met with city administration to discuss the possibility of establishing their recently purchased property as a commercial rehabilitation district. The guidelines for this designation are established under Public Act 210 of 2005. Under this act, tax exemptions are approved for a term of 1 to 10 years as determined by the local unit of government. The property's taxes are based upon the previous year's taxable value prior to the rehabilitation. The taxable value is then frozen for the duration of the certificate and exempts the new investment from local taxes. The school operating tax and the state education tax are still levied on the new investment. Land and personal property cannot be abated under this act. This is the first time City Commission will decide whether or not to declare property as a commercial rehabilitation district. If approved by the City Commission, a copy of the resolution adopting the district would be provided to the county. Within 28 days, the county could reject the establishment of the district. If the district is established, the property owner would then apply to the city for a Commercial Rehabilitation Act exemption. If approved by the city, this would then advance to the State Tax Commission for consideration. The Commission reviewed this information at their meeting of May 14, 2012, and scheduled a public hearing for this evening. If approved, the Public Act 210 of 2005 requires the adoption of a resolution establishing this district. That resolution is attached. Fiscal effect, none at this time. If an exemption is subsequently approved for the maximum length of time, the city would realize annual income based upon the attached spreadsheet, TV frozen plus land, and the total abatement would be $233,510 of city operating tax. Recommendation, following a public hearing, consider establishing a commercial rehabilitation district at 500 and 502 West Washington Street. If approved, adopt a resolution establishing a commercial rehabilitation district and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the resolution. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
All right, thank you. And Matt, are you going to present to us today? Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Matt Goujon, General Manager of the Marquette Food Co-op, 696 Mangum Road. Somebody took the pictures of my grocery store away. I'd like to speak a little more directly about the benefits of this investment of city operating tax in our project. The Marquette Food Co-op really sees this as a public-private partnership. in the further development of the west end of downtown. Of course, the Marquette Food Co-op has been in existence in the city of Marquette for 41 years, and we are committed to sustainable growth. This certificate of exemption with the creation of this commercial rehabilitation district is a linchpin to further funding from the state of Michigan in our project. We have been formally asked and are in process of applying for a grant through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation through their Community Revitalization Program, which is funded via the Michigan Strategic Fund, of up to 25% of our project, or $1 million. The creation of this rehabilitation district by the commission tonight is critical to this, because one of the requirements is that we show evidence of community investment and commitment to the project. With the creation of this district, we would then meet at least 17 of their 19 eligibility requirements to attain that grant. Also, the creation of this district assists us in attaining funding through the Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development through a grant to diversify our business into a food hub. A food hub is essentially an aggregator of locally grown foods and a distributor of those foods. We are working in partnership with a group in the Eastern Upper Peninsula called the Eastern Upper Peninsula Food Hub Project, which is comprised mostly of farms and small businesses and being facilitated by Michigan State University Extension Office. The idea being that there's more agriculture and more food grown in the East End that could be brought to this central market. The buildings that we bought in February of this year at 500 and 502 West Washington will serve as an aggregation point for these foods to be sold in this central market. The funding from MDARD is up to $200,000. So the creation of this district really for us and for our community releases up to $1.2 million in state funding into downtown Marquette. A little more directly, property values. There's been a number of things said about the increase in property values once we move into that building. Since 2006, when our last expansion on Baraga Street, there have been a number of new businesses that have been created around our current store, or businesses that have moved there. The Garden Bouquet, the Marquette Baking Company, the now defunct Rubaiyat, Dead River Coffee, Everyday Wines, and the Triplex Apartment House down on the corner of 3rd and Baraga. And most recently, but not on Baraga, the Oradoc Brewery is right in our neighborhood, can be seen directly across the parking lots. These buildings were in part purchased and improved because of their proximity to the Marquette Food Co-op. We're currently drawing 600 people a day into our store. With our expansion, we'll be drawing upwards of 1,000 people a day to that end of downtown. Certainly, we will see additional development on Washington Street in that 500 block, and we're already seeing it happen today with Beth Milner Jewelry purchased the building from Dax Richer recently. Those buildings, I was using the City of Marquette Internet Services today looking at property values, and since 2006, the taxable value of 4 buildings in that area of Baraga Street increased in their value by 46%. In 2006, the taxable value of those buildings was roughly $358,000. As of the end of last year, their value is at $658,000 collectively. So it does happen. We create an awful lot of activity where we are. Our project also means jobs for the city of Marquette. Before we even open the doors on our new store, we will have hired at least 25 additional people. Within 4 years, when our store is at its maturity, we will employ more than 100 people. I believe we are today Marquette's largest employer in downtown, and I suspect that we will continue to be so. So if the commission has any questions for me, I would be happy to field them.
We may call you back up, Matt. All right, thank you.
One last thing I would mention, that also we are very interested in shared parking at our facility. I don't know how we'd keep people out of there anyway, so.
All right, thank you. All right, this is a public hearing. We'll now open it up to the public. If there's anyone that would like to address this issue, please give your name and address for the record.
Natasha Lance, 192 Cundy Road. I'm speaking this evening in my role as the community liaison for the Marquette Food Co-op, and I've been involved in the co-op in a variety of capacities since 2003. I'd like to begin by saying that the Marquette Food Co-op is community-owned by approximately 3,200 households, and right now we're growing at an average of 1 new household per day. Designating our co-op's properties as a commercial rehabilitation district will yield a significant return on investment as evidenced by a healthier community. A little bit different tack. Hippocrates, the man credited with being the father of modern medicine, said, "Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food." The economic health of a community is strong when the physical and mental health of its residents is strong. Our co-op's extensive outreach department takes this view and applies it to all of our educational programming by providing valuable services across sectors of our community. All of our services are free of charge, with the exception of a few of our cooking classes. In 2011, our programming reached 10,514 people. We gave 41 presentations to 1,744 individuals, with 1,000 of those being young people in our community. We attended 37 events and reached 6,503 people with a strong message about the benefits of eating healthy and buying locally. We hosted 16 educational programs, 12 cooking classes, and 5 film screenings that reached 754 people. We donated 675 pounds of food to the Central Upper Peninsula Food Bank last year. The NMU Hoop House Pilot Project, which we oversee, generated 1,025 pounds of food last year, many of those pounds which went to the culinary students at NMU and then were donated to the various pantries and shelters in our area. 95 community members attended hands-on workshops at that hoop house and gained valuable skills that would help them to feed themselves. We also hosted farm tours at 11 local farms and coordinated the construction and educational activities at the 3 new hoop houses in the schools in this area. So our co-op actively seeks ways to make healthy food accessible to people of all income levels, and this is very important. This is evidenced by more than $300,000 in Bridge Card, which is formerly known as food stamps, at our store last year. We also work to encourage farmers markets to accept the Bridge Card, and we offer numerous educational programs to help people eat healthy on a budget. We look for opportunities to partner with other businesses and organizations to make our community an even healthier and better place to live and work for everyone. We currently work with the YMCA, NMU, MGH, Marquette Senior High School, the UP Poverty Initiative Reduction, local farmers, farmers markets, and the list goes on and on. I know that fiscal responsibility is a fundamental part of your role as commissioners, but I also know that place-based economic development can only occur by making decisions that factor in those things that make an area attractive to both residents and business owners. By designating our buildings located at 500 and 502 West Washington as a commercial rehabilitation district, you're voting for a business that not only brings fiscal return on investment, but also for a business that's actively working to ensure the health and longevity of both the city's residents and the businesses that serve them. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you this evening and appreciate any consideration that you give our request. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the commission?
My name is Amy Conover. I live at 419 North 4th Street in Marquette here. I would like to start by saying that my parents were co-op owners back in the late 70s, and I remember the Marquette Food Co-op when it was a few families that would gather in a pretty much empty building to pick up or receive and then divide up these large bags of bulk foods that they were purchasing so that our families could have healthy foods, organically grown foods, produce, and bulk staple foods at a very low cost to provide for their families and their children. I've grown up understanding how the co-op is intended to help both its owners, its members, and anyone who comes there to shop, but also the community as a whole. It's founded on principles that are intended to really foster the growth of our community. And I've seen it happen, and I am a co-op owner and would strongly urge, as a citizen, as a resident of Marquette, I would like to ask the commission to support the designation of this commercial rehabilitation district because I think it is moving our community in the right direction.
Thank you.
Right, Chef Barreto, 350 East Ridge, Marquette. These are my opinions. Again, I would like to try to push the co-op to incorporate a coffee shop into this development. And we have enough bars in town now to poison every single living soul around here, but no worthwhile coffee shop. I'd also like to remind them that another citizen had recommended providing a connection between the main store and what was formerly the hot dog business, so that people with disabilities can transfer between one or the other and not have to mess with the dangers of Washington Street. So aside from that, I'd just like to ask the commission to work with the co-op to bring this to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Daniel Torres, still at 221 West Nicolay. Again, I'd like to express my support for what the co-op is doing on Washington Street. Kind of close to home. The co-op probably wishes that I was a model customer of those people, 600 that walk in every door, because I think my expenditures, percentage of my grocery expenses has probably gone to 75% at the co-op from maybe 10% 3 years ago. And I think I see that trend. I mean, a lot of people are paying attention to that. I think the unique thing that they hold is that they're not just in the grocery food business. I think they're the health and wellness business. I had the pleasure of working with their outreach staff on some programs in the last few months, and it's astounding the work they do. And it's a head scratcher for me that nobody has to pay a penny for that work that they do. They make an incredible contribution to this community that I think a lot of people don't recognize. So I personally am grateful for that. I certainly agree that that has the potential to, again, be the catalyst for that part of Marquette. Selfishly, I happen to own 2 parcels immediately adjacent. They were on the market. When I found out they bought them, I took them off the market because I want to see what happens. But I think the history is evident on Baraga, how that has just really come alive and become a very vibrant part of the community. The downtown district technically has extended to 7th Street, but effectively really ended at 3rd or 4th, where I think this now will really be the catalyst to get a lot more development, have property owners taking a look at themselves and looking at their properties, reinvesting, and I'm anxious to see that whole corridor, and actually all the way up to Lincoln because of the other project as well, 5-6 years from now, and I think it's going to be a pretty amazing picture. So again, I encourage the commission to support this effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Stanley. I'm at 375 West Crescent. And I've gone to the co-op many, many times, and I love it. I don't even go in there sometimes for some things they have, but just to talk to the people that work there, because they help me out with so many questions that I have. And I just want to say I fully support this, and I hope you guys will work with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Michelle Holly. I'm an attorney here in Marquette, and I've had the pleasure of working with the food co-op in their real estate purchases of 500 and 502 West Washington. I'm also a landowner here in the city of Marquette, and I reside at 235 Bazinet Road in Marquette. First of all, I'd like to point out to you that this project meets every requirement for Public Act 2010 of 2005. The act was designed and enacted in order to promote rehabilitation in downtown areas that are suffering from blight or underutilization, which is certainly happening on that end of Marquette. The Viridia project is a very exciting project, and the 2 projects together would complement each other beautifully to bring more people and more vitality to that end of town. Not only would it revitalize that end of town, this project would bring significant jobs to the city. We would create construction jobs, increase staffing in the store, as well as increase demand for farmers' goods here in the region. And so the farmers and the other suppliers to the co-op would certainly experience growth and increased employment due to the expansion of the co-op. I want to stress that this is not a giveaway. The co-op is not asking you to give them anything, but what they're asking you to do is make a wise and prudent investment in not only their future, but also the future of this community. The co-op will reinvest with their improvement of the real estate itself. That process will begin happening almost immediately. The West End parking situation will improve with this project. There will be more jobs in the city, as everyone has addressed already. And it will increase the city's walkability and bikeability. It will also reinvest in the citizens of Marquette through their public education projects and the cooperation with the farmers to increase the region's local food networks. And those networks have the potential to bring a whole new level of awareness, not only to Marquette, but about Marquette across the region, as it grows as a food hub and becomes much more well known for being a vital part of the state's food system. Given the benefits to the city and the residents here, I encourage you to adopt the resolution before you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this issue? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, what is your pleasure? Commissioner Schneider?
Well, actually, before we get into discussion, I'd like to ask our city attorney a technical question. At least I don't know if any of the other commissioners are technically members or owners of the co-op. And I myself also had served on the board of the co-op up until 2006. So I'm not sure if either of those preclude me from being involved in the discussion or vote.
My first thought is you're not alone. Sounds like there are 3,200 other households.
Well, I'm one of them too, so.
Is there any kind of annual shareholder payment to you, anything like that?
At times, the board will choose to give a return on patronage, so it's basically in lieu of a discount.
I almost see this as a public-private partnership in many ways. I mean, when you think of the number of households who are involved in this, we are probably also. So I don't see this as a financial interest conflict. I think it's more of a common public interest enterprise, and whatever remuneration you would get would probably be de minimis, and so I wouldn't find it a conflict. That would be my opinion.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Ryan?
Could I just get an update from staff on the impact on taxes in the city of this decision?
In your packet for the meeting, there was a spreadsheet that was based upon a $3 million investment.
It was a little complicated, so I'd just like you to explain it to me.
Sure, I certainly will. I don't know that we don't have this available to bring up, but essentially what you're looking at right now is it brings in a certain amount of taxes. Right in 2012, $5,627 worth of city or township millage, which is city operating millage, I'm sorry, is what the city gets from that. If there is a $3 million investment that is made that is assumed over time, at the end of the project, and we've projected it out to 2023, the city operating millage collected would be $31,257. So assuming that $3 million investment occurs, you could look at this as a total abatement of $233,510 over the course of from 2012 to 2023. But again, that's assuming that $3 million investment occurs. If they keep the property now and don't make the immediate $3 million investment that they're projecting, then these numbers are not accurate. So it's kind of speculative based on that investment.
Could I also ask a question then of Matt? Maybe back at the... I think you covered some of this, but I just want to make sure I get it right. I think one of the things at least I wrestle with, and I'm sure others, is, every time a business makes an investment in Marquette, we don't provide some kind of special incentive. It just so happens tonight we're dealing with two. And in the case of the first one, it was easy to see where certain taxes were going to be used for a certain purpose to enhance the project. I very much support the co-op. I think it does an outstanding job in our community. I'm just trying to look at the rationale for providing this kind of incentive. You explained that there would be some other benefits that would come with it. Obviously, our $233,000 is not going to make or break this project. Could you give us a little more detail on that as far as what this means in addition to the city tax revenue? What other benefits will come with our making this decision? From the state specifically?
From the state specifically. Well, the grant from the MEDC goes directly into our project. And part of our project is the creation of this food hub, this thing called the food hub. It's a new thing that's being talked about at the state level. The food hub creates essentially a new arm of our business. So it's a vehicle for more job creation. It's a vehicle for bringing more goods into our community. It creates certain partnerships throughout the entire Upper Peninsula with Marquette being that central market. And I think that that is a key aspect of this whole project. It's a long-term project, but we're on the cusp of creating it. Department of Ag Rural Development has a request for proposal that's being released this next week. Myself and Natasha Lance from our organization have been present and have been instrumental in the creation of this request for proposal. We've been invited by the state of Michigan to all of the meetings since this last November. So we are a very good candidate to receive this funding and to create this new essentially business entity within the city of Marquette. Now our current facility will suffice for a while, but down the road we will be looking for an additional space to operate the food hub. And the hub can be a variety of things. It's a warehouse and a place of distribution, but it can also be a place of light processing of food for institutional purchase. You know, we get an awful lot of inquiry from organizations like Marquette General and the public schools and Northern Michigan University. Everybody wants local foods on their menus. Well, there certainly is just no capacity to supply that. So the creation of this hub works to assist, it works to build capacity for agriculture in the UP.
So would it be fair to say here that the key thing is not so much the tax subsidy you may get from the city, but the fact that we designate you as a certain category of business to qualify for this act? Is that's really the key?
Sure.
How much was that grant? The state grant? What?
The MEDC grant is up to $1 million, and the Department of Ag Rural Development is $200,000.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Commissioner Nemi?
Matt, I have a question for you. You'd mentioned in your presentation that the MEDC looks at a local investment or a local support. We're looking at a 1 to 10 year abatement here. Is there any formula that they use, whether it's 1 year or 10 years or 5 years to match, and you say up to $1 million? Is that formula or the amount of local support?
Is it contingent upon? Yeah.
Related to the amount up to?
To my knowledge, there is no bar that they're looking for community investment.
Okay. So 5 years would be sufficient?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner St. Ange?
Thank you, Your Honor. Matt, I got a couple questions for you. Shouldn't be a surprise. I need to know what your plan is. I mean, all we've heard here and all we've seen and all we've debated is this 1 to 10 year tax abatement. The project that was before us, before yours, earlier this evening, had a very detailed plan in terms of what was going to be done, when it was going to be done, what the commitment was, what the return on that investment was going to be. Granted, I've heard a lot of commentary about the intrinsic values of the project, but I'd like to know what the tangible value of the project is going to be going forward. You know, honestly, if Mr. Mahaney had come to us with this type of request and nothing laid out in front of us, we would have laughed him out of the room. So it's imperative to me to better understand, and I think we owe it to the community to better understand what the co-op is intending to do with that property. It's been characterized as being blighted and underutilized. I would argue it's not blighted and underutilized, at least the vast majority of it. There are existing businesses that were in that building doing business there. So I guess, long story short, tell me what your plan is. How many years of abatement are you asking? What are your intentions with regard to the building and the grounds? And then would you even go so far as to make a commitment to the city that if you get this project and you become the food hub, I don't know what the terminology is, that you will cite that in the city of Marquette and not do it somewhere else, so that any tax benefit that may come to the city can, in fact, you know, we can get some tangible return on a $233,000 abatement?
To start at the end of your question, I will happily commit to citing the food hub within the city of Marquette when that comes to be. Our plan for that building is, as Mr. Mahaney did with his building, have it deemed functionally obsolete. It was originally a grocery store. In its current state, it may not be used as a grocery store without significant renovation. Our intent is to use it as a grocery store. We're funding our project not only with this grant money. We will also be selling preferred shares to our members with a goal of raising another $1 million from our membership through direct investment. Our senior lender will be Range Bank, headquartered in Negaunee. We also will be getting some Office of Community Service money through Northern Initiatives to be used toward equipment purchases. So our plan is, once we have our member capital campaign off the ground, which will be, there are a number of things that we have to do with the state of Michigan relative to securities filings. Those things are underway currently. Long story short is, by the month of September, we will be selling preferred stock to our members. Also by the month of September, I would hope to have commitment from the MEDC on their grant. At that time, in the month of September, we would start construction on the building. Our intent is to gut the building, bring it back to its shell. A week or so ago, we got a variance from the zoning board in this room to build an addition onto the back of the building, spanning from the north wall of that building across to that other retaining wall to build additional back room space for us. We will put all of our offices, our classrooms, and administrative support facilities in the basement of that building. That building has a 5,600 square foot basement. It's 11,200 square feet on the floor. We will utilize 9,000 square feet of that building for our retail space, which essentially triples the size of our current facility. Within the first year of operation, we have projected sales of just under $7 million. And at store maturity, we will be doing anywhere from $10 to $12 million in sales. We intend to continue to run all of our outreach programming, working particularly with small farms in the Upper Peninsula to increase the supply of local foods.
If you don't mind me interrupting, we've heard all of that, and that's fine and good. I wanted to know what you're doing with the property, what the investment is. So by September of this year, you intend to be
construction.
Building on that site,
Yes.
at the same time soliciting members for preferred shares.
Yes.
So you have funding that's already in place. What happens if that falls apart? What happens if you don't raise the capital? Because we would ask the same questions of anybody else who is in front of us with a project of this magnitude, where we're, in essence, being asked to be a partner in a public-private relationship. So what happens if you don't create the revenue needed to fund this project? I mean, it seems pretty lofty, wouldn't you agree?
I don't know that it's lofty. I'm confident, and I know that that's no guarantee, I'm confident that we will raise the capital that we need from our members. We have commitments from many of them, and we are intending to follow through on what we do. If we don't raise the necessary capital, we will scale back our plan and get our doors open.
So if you don't get this tax abatement, your project will likely to proceed as planned, at least in some capacity.
Our project will proceed one way or another, yes.
So how many years of abatement are you asking for? I keep hearing 1 to 10. Do you know, are you asking for the maximum?
I am asking for the maximum,
So you want a 10-year abatement?
yes.
And the value of the project, if you build it out in its entirety, it will be what?
We're intending to spend $4.5 million on the project.
So the abatement that's been projected is actually
Excuse me,
underfunded.
that includes the acquisition.
How much was the acquisition, if you don't mind me asking?
Both buildings was $1,037,000.
So it's a $3.2 million investment, 3.5
Yes.
for 10 years. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Matt. Commissioners, do we have a motion? Not everyone at once, please. Do we have discussion we want to lead off with?
Chris, just a follow-up question.
Yes.
What process does this go through? This also has to be approved by the county, I understand, and then, is that correct, City Manager?
Thank you. All of that activity subsequent to the approval this evening.
Right, it starts with us, but this is not the end of the line.
Correct. Anything having to do with the tax abatement has to be coordinated with the county.
Okay. And does this, whatever action we take tonight, have to include the length of time that we're going to be involved in this
Yes.
abatement? Okay.
Commissioner Nemi?
Thank you, Your Honor. To follow up, City Manager, it goes to the county. If they were to say no, does that mean that their taxes are simply not abated, or the entire project is dead?
Let me ask our Community Development Director to speak in, and as needed, our CFO.
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sorry.
Looks like we'll have to get back and answer subsequently.
Okay.
When Commissioner Nemi says the project is dead, he means
The abatement project,
Right,
not
yeah,
the
not the project.
not the whole project. No.
Nobody? I can't make a motion here, so up, down, Commissioner Schneider.
Well, in that case, I will go ahead and make the motion, just to see how it goes, to establish a commercial rehabilitation district for 500 and 502 West Washington Street, and adopt the resolution establishing a commercial rehabilitation district, and allow you, the mayor, to and clerk, to sign the resolution
10 years.
for 3 years.
10. Yes, it was 10 years.
He asked for 10.
Yeah. You said 3.
I did say 3.
The motion is to adopt it for 3 years. Do we have support? Commissioner Nemi?
Thank you, Your Honor. I can second that motion.
All right, discussion, Commissioner Schneider?
Well, the time seems to be a little odd for some of the commissioners to swallow. I guess looking at this, I'm not a big fan of tax abatement, period. And I sat on the board of the Marquette Food Co-op when we got rid of discounts to our membership. And we got rid of discounts to our membership because we didn't like the idea of giving up the money that could come in the door before it came in. And we wanted to be able to give it back to our the owners and the patrons of the store after they spent it with us. And I would much rather see us go that route of collecting all the tax money and then being able to give it back as needed. But seeing the way that this can work with the state and leverage funding for potential future projects, I think is really, really valuable to our community. So in that light, I'm willing to support it. However, if the state is not requiring that we go for the whole 10 years, even though that's what's requested, I like the idea of going with a smaller number that reduces the amount that's being abated, but still meets state requirements.
Okay, Commissioner Nemi?
Thank you, Your Honor. I tend to agree with what Commissioner Schneider is saying. I probably would have gone a couple more years, but 3 years is fine with me. The co-op does some wonderful things, and I, along with some of the other commissioners, had a chance to about a week ago or a week and a half ago attend a food focus group, and it was the concept of a food hub and utilizing our local producers is really an exciting thing, and I think the co-op is really pushing that, and I think they'll be a catalyst for that type of thing, and it will provide a benefit to the city in the future. I'm not a real keen supporter of tax abatements, especially when obviously taxes are paid for-profit entities, but I can see some public benefit to this, and I would have voted against it except for the fact that it does provide them an opportunity to garner some state money to assist their project, and assisting their project will only enhance the food industry in Marquette and hopefully make Marquette the center of a food industry in the future.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Stonehouse?
I'll support the motion, and again, like I think probably most of us up here, we're certainly troubled by any time you begin to work with tax abatements, just as a matter of public policy. I mean, ultimately, somebody needs to pay the tax, or we don't have any money. So how we keep abating it becomes certainly a significant issue, I think, for everybody. In the case of the earlier presentation, I think given the brownfield nature of the site, that presented a circumstance somewhat different than this site, which is not a driven brownfield. I'm certainly willing to support, again, the motion as given. You know, the real positive things that come out of the food co-op certainly are really just incredible. And for folks that have not experienced it or sat down with them and looked at the opportunity for the food hub in the Upper Peninsula and the opportunities for Marquette, I think you really need to do so, because it is an eye-opener what's out there and what's happening and how we can indeed be part of it. Very important to all of us. And much as the other development could, this one too could spur a lot of good development right downtown, right in that area. I'm absolutely certain that it will do so. And as you look at organizations within the city and the length of time they've been functioning and the good they have done, certainly the food co-op is right there with any of them. So I'll support it. Would have done for a little bit longer, but again, we need to be very careful with how we deal, I think, with the public money in terms of tax abatements. Thank you.
Commissioner Ryan?
One more question. How is the DDA affected by this decision?
We'll have to respond after the meeting with that answer. But I wanted to point out one more time, we're establishing the district this evening in this request. The county can certainly reject any kind of tax abatement that would be proposed, but there will be a subsequent opportunity should the commission decide to pursue one, where we can come up with something very similar to the brownfield type of developers agreement, where additional terms and conditions can be laid out. We can ask Matt to come back and provide any other level of detail that the commission might be interested in seeing.
You know, I came here tonight with the same questions everybody else had. I guess I had my questions answered and would have been prepared to provide support for this, and I will. But I guess this seems like kind of half-hearted support. 3 years just seems, I don't know. You know, maybe even 5 years, as somebody else said, might have been nice. But you know, if that's the only choice we have, I guess that's it.
Commissioner Schneider?
Mr. Mayor, in that case, should the second to my motion concur, then since I hear a few other commissioners stating that they prefer it to be longer, I would be willing to extend it to 5 years.
Okay.
You sold me on 3.
Okay. Done by amendment.
Right.
Motion on the floor. If someone wants to amend it.
Does someone want to make a motion to amend it to 5 years? Commissioner Ryan?
I move we amend the motion to 5 years.
Do we have support? Commissioner Stonehouse supports. Any comments?
No, it just, you know, I think it sends a stronger message to the state of Michigan that we're willing to support this project. I'm sold on the food, forget the term now, the food, food hub. You know, and I think this is going to create real opportunities for Marquette, some jobs and some financial benefits that are worth considering.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
Nothing, Your Honor. Been said.
Commissioner St. Onge?
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, I have repeatedly spoke out against the project as originally scoped, quite frankly, because the project wasn't really scoped. All we knew it was somewhere between 1 and 10 years. We had no idea what the plan was. And again, this evening, at least in written context, we didn't understand. I don't think we had a good feel for what the full impact was. I appreciated the response. I was very encouraged by the original motion of 3 years. I do concur that the food co-op has done a marvelous job and is an admirable benefit to the city of Marquette. But at the end of the day, the comment made earlier that we up here have a responsibility for fiscal conservatism. We have to balance the books. Struck a chord, and it's been a chord that I've been singing for the last 2.5 years, but we keep giving it away. And the original motion of 3 years, given the benefits that the co-op brings to the table, I thought were a great balance of, if you will, supply and demand. We as a community, in my sole opinion, are not at liberty to give away $233,000. We give away a lot, and we have to start paying the piper. And yeah, there will be intrinsic benefits going forward, there usually are, but they need to be tangible for us because we have to pay the bills. I was all ready to support 3 years. I thought that was reasonable. That was a reasonable investment for us going forward. This notion of just throwing money around and going from willy-nilly from 3 to 5 years because somebody wants it I'm not going to support it. And it probably will still get passed. I'll probably still lose. But at the end of the day, I have to stand up for the notion that we have to pay the bills, and we have to learn to pay the bills in this community. And, you guys do a great job. I wish you all the best. But you're going to do it regardless. And if we can at least leverage a little bit to allow you access to state funds, I thought that was the best course of action for us. But now to just keep giving more away, for this sake, we might as well just have another friendly amendment to make it 10 and be done with it. And then everybody will be happy. So I'm not going to support the 5. I wish it was 3. I would support it. But I can't support 5. Thank you.
Your Honor, I grant Mr. St. Ange the right to his views, but I don't think it's fair for him to consider himself the guardian and for the rest of us to be willy-nilly throwing around the city's money. We're all making decisions based on our own facts. I wish I had the fact, Mr. Vida, about how the DDA is affected by this. Is it the DDA that's going to lose additional funding, or is it the city operating funds?
I'm afraid we're going to have to respond to that after the meeting, sir. Right now, the 7th Street area, I believe, is outside the west end of the DDA district, so I don't believe there's an impact, but I'd like to have an opportunity to check my facts before I officially respond.
Well, I'm going to support this, and I'll tell you why. And just as an example, as I sat down tonight, there's a card on my desk inviting me to the 20th anniversary of a business that's received a couple of tax abatements in this community. Money apparently thrown around willy-nilly. Pioneer Surgical, wonderful company in this town that has succeeded and expanded and grown because they were given some tools to invest. So I'll support this. I wouldn't have supported 3 years. I think 5 is reasonable. And I think the investment we'll see back in this community will well exceed what we're giving up here. Commissioner DePietro?
Thank you, Your Honor. I was also questioning the 3 year. I didn't think that was going to be enough. 5 is fine. 10 I would have had a problem with, but I'll support the 5 years. Thank you.
Commissioner Nemi?
Your Honor, thank you. I've got the tax records here for these two properties, and they're both in the DDA. They pay DDA taxes. So.
Okay.
So the DDA is the one who would be affected by this, probably.
They're the ones who would lose the increment.
Right. Which makes a difference.
All right. We'll ask the question on the motion to amend the motion from 3 to 5. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. Motion carries 5 to 2.
Your Honor, now on the main motion that's been amended, we'll need a roll call vote because it's a resolution, and I anticipate it won't be unanimous.
Okay.
On the amendment.
Nemi and St. Ange? Any more comment on this motion now? Okay, City Clerk, do you want to do a roll call, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Mayor Pro Tem DePietro?
Yes.
Commissioner Nemi?
Yes.
Commissioner Ryan?
Yes.
Commissioner St. Ange?
No.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
Yes.
And Mayor Keevala?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Okay, next up, item number 3. A very brief presentation by our City Clerk, Dave Blue, on the Board of Canvassers report.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I have a very brief presentation on the Board of Canvassers. It's a board of the City Commission that does not meet very often, doesn't have a very wide opportunity to function within the organization. However, it does have some important roles that it plays in the election process. Members include Dave Allen, myself as City Clerk as Chair, Inez Christian, Lauren Marlowe, Margaret Shorkey, and our liaison officer is Deputy City Clerk Hazaras. The mission of the board is authorized by Charter, Section 3.11, and State Law Election Code, Act 116 of 1954, as amended, which has been amended many times. This body represents the residents of the city of Marquette with regard to election results. It meets the day following city elections, normally twice annually. Occasionally there's a third election in the city in any given year. This body certifies election results for elected positions on the City Commission and the Board of Light and Power. It also certifies election results for various propositions. Upcoming meetings will be the day after the August primary, August 8th at 3 p.m. to certify the primary election results, and on November 7th, the day after the presidential election, to certify the general election results. Other than that, questions? None? Thank you.
Any questions? None. Thank you. Okay, at this point, we're going to welcome a couple of new members to our city boards. David Kingston and Nicole DeWald, if you could please meet me at the lectern. Welcome, David. David is the newest member of the Marquette Area Wastewater Treatment Advisory Board. And he has served previously 6 years, so he's coming back on to do another stint. So we welcome your experience and your leadership, and thank you. This is City Marquette. Thank you. Is it? Oh, yep, thank you. Next up, Nicole is the newest and only member of our new Rec Authority Board. So we're trying hard to get a couple more members to join you, but thank you for serving. It's a very important function. This is a new board. We're trying to pull everyone together, so we appreciate your help.
I think it'll be a great collaboration. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, we've got one new appointment, and that is Todd Beauchamp, Harbor Advisory Committee, term ending 6/1/15. Commissioners, what's your pleasure? Commissioner Nemi?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we appoint Todd Beauchamp to the Harbor Advisory Committee for a term ending June 1, 2015.
Thank you. Do we have support? Commissioner DePietro supports. Any additional comment?
Thank Mr. Beauchamp for being willing to serve the city.
Thank you. Commissioner DePietro?
And I too thank Todd Beauchamp for serving on the HAC board.
All right. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Motion carries. And then we've got a bunch of reappointments. I'll read them off, and we can take them one at a time if you'd like, or all together. Yorma Lankinen to the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority as a Marquette City designee, term ending 7/1/14. Erica Hefke, Presque Isle Park Advisory Committee, term ending 4/1/15. Dan Emmendorfer, Investment Advisory Board, term ending 7/1/15. Melissa Sprouse, Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, term ending 6/1/15. Diane Jarvie, Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, term ending 6/1/15. And Mark Canale, Hospital Finance Authority, term ending 7/1/17. So, Commissioner Stonehouse?
I move to appoint as read.
Thank you. Do we have support? Commissioner Ryan?
Support the motion.
Any additional comments, Commissioner Stonehouse?
None.
Commissioner Ryan?
Glad to have these people joining us or rejoining, as the case may be.
All right. Any additional comments? Seeing none, all in favor, say yes.
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 Opposed? All right, motion carries. Next up is public comment. Comments may not exceed 3 minutes per person. Citizens may reserve time to speak on agenda items. This may result in the item being moved up on the agenda. Not that it matters tonight. Anyone wishing to speak?
Good evening. Again, Yor Malankin, 8 Marquette Drive. Thank you for the reappointment. I'll be happy to talk trash for another 2 more years. Putting on my other hat is the 4th of July and the Rotary fundraiser. I am glad to report that the Isle Royal Sunset Cruise was sold out about a week or 10 days ago, and so that fundraising portion has gone really, really well. Unfortunately, the general public fundraising is down about $8,000. We as a 4th of July committee spend $30,000 in putting these fireworks together, so we are about $8,000 short as of today in raising those funds. So I would encourage that the people out there in the general public would be so kind and write a check to the 4th of July committee, and they can send it to my address at 8 Marquette Drive, and we will put it in the proper category for that. Again, we are running short on the fundraising from the general public. The other fundraisers are doing well, but the general public fundraiser has fallen short as of right now. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
I'm Jeff Erto, 350 East Ridge, Marquette. These are my opinions. At the foot of Gaines Rock, we see the impact of an ill-placed cement pad, which detracts from the view at one of the most critical points along the segment of our lakeshore. City-wise, let us please centralize such amenities to better preserve the scenery instead of salting most every view with unnatural amenities. At our new roundabout, you've answered your first 2 egregious errors with a third 3-story eyesore, which effectively blocks the rest of the view. All we see now are the hideous backs of those townhouses, all with roof features that are higher than necessary. You saw the ramifications of your first mistake, which drew criticism and disgust from many, yet you made no apparent effort to work with the developer to avert further obstruction, leading to the second phase. And then you still couldn't get it together in time to save any of the view. Assurances that officials made to Southside residents were never honored, even after 6 of you heard the testimony regarding the Phase 1 impact. Did even one of you take any initiative? If I'm the only one who's outwardly vocal about this lost opportunity, then good. Enjoy your new glitzy view. Regardless of your damage, years from now we'll receive awards for our community lakeshore, because we had the foresight to save more than most places, and we've developed the land more gently than larger cities. All my comments bear those points in mind. But we could have done better. Another example being the Lower Harbor birdhouses with their 27% coverage variance. As stretches along McCarty's Cove begin to get trampled, you've undertaken no effort to preserve the dune grass. In fact, the cement block for the center flagpole lies in the middle of the dune. At least twice a day it's trampled to raise and lower the flag, plus by untold others at this most crowded point of the beach. The flagpole ought to be planted next to one of the 2 back footings of the nearby North Lifeguard stand. It creates less visual impact to consolidate items instead of creating a separate, scattered footprint for each item. At McCarty's Cove, a 3rd volleyball pole was sunk for when 2 courts are needed. Players on the west end are trampling the dune grass. These grasses are a major asset that helps stabilize and beautify our beach, and they're threatened at many points along the cove. We need seasonal earth tone fencing to protect the most vulnerable areas. Right now, you're encouraging that area to get trampled. Even more incredibly, during my several hours at Picnic Rocks this season, I've seen no supervision. If you don't improve, another drowning is inevitable, as it was 2 summers ago when your refusal to take action allegedly contributed to the unnecessary loss of life.
Thank you, Mr. Verital. Anyone else wishing? Mr. Cambenzi.
Bob Cambenzi, 306 North 6th Street. Jim DeMarinis and myself are here to answer any questions you might have on item number 8.
All right, thank you, Bob. Anyone else wishing to address the commission? Okay, seeing none. City Clerk, do you want to read through the consent agenda?
Yes, Your Honor. Item A, approve the minutes of the June 11, 2012 commission meeting. Item B, approve the total bills payable in the amount of $462,352.17. Item C, approve the annual fuel depot agreement with the Alger Marquette Community Action Board for FY 12-13 and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the agreement. Item D, approve the annual fuel agreement with the Powell Township School for FY 12 and 13 and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement. Item E, approve the annual fuel depot agreement with the Market Area Public Schools for FY 12-13 and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and execute the agreement. Item F, award a bid in the amount not to exceed $4,761.60 at the unit prices bid for garbage can liners to Unipack of Brooklyn, New York, being low bid, meeting specifications. Item G, authorize the purchase of sodium aluminate from U.S. Alco at a unit price of $541.74 per ton. Item H, award a bid to purchase 4 HE-E dry portable dehumidification units from Rayleigh Brothers Incorporated in the amount of $11,500, being the lowest bid and meeting specifications. Item I, authorize the MISTA grant application. Item J, authorize contract services excuse me, for construction materials testing for 2012 reconstruction projects from GEI Consultants Incorporated for MDOT requirements and per the discretion of the city engineer at a cost not to exceed $20,000. And item J, award the water system supply materials bid for FY 12-13 to the low bidder, meeting specifications as summarized.
All right. Commissioners, Commissioner DePietro.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a second. Commissioner Nemi.
Thank you, Your Honor. I second the motion.
Any comments? Commissioner DePietro.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor, say yes.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Report and recommendation from the mayor is number 7 under new business regarding city manager's annual performance and compensation. City clerk.
Yes, Your Honor. Background, as part of the city manager's employment agreement, the city agrees to evaluate the performance and compensation of the city manager in June of each year. Past practice has been to appoint 3 commissioners to serve on a committee to review the evaluations completed by all commissioners and make a recommendation regarding any adjustments to the manager's compensation or terms of employment for consideration at the next scheduled commission meeting. Fiscal effect, none by this action. Recommendation, appoint 3 commissioners, city commissioners to serve on the committee to review the city manager's performance evaluation and make a recommendation regarding any adjustment to the manager's compensation or terms of employment. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, we're looking for 3 volunteers, if we could, and then we'll put it in the form of a motion. Commissioner Stonehouse, see him with his hand up. Anyone else? Commissioner DePietro? Anyone? Commissioner Schneider?
I'll do it if Commissioner Nemi doesn't really want to do it. I was in on it last year, and I think it would be good to have other commissioners involved, but I'll be the 3rd if necessary.
Okay. So we have 3 volunteers. Stonehouse?
I give up my spot for Commissioner Nemi. No. I was pointing that way.
I said it first.
Okay, so we have Commissioner Stonehouse, DePietro, and Schneider that have volunteered. Do we have a motion to appoint the 3 of them? Commissioner Ryan.
I move we appoint Commissioners Schneider, DePietro, and Stonehouse to serve on a committee to review the city manager's performance evaluation and make recommendations regarding adjustments to compensation or terms of employment.
All right.
Second motion.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any comments? All in favor, say yes.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Number 8, report and recommendation from the city manager regarding a request for easement on city-owned property along South McClellan Avenue. City clerk?
Yes, Your Honor. Background, Mr. James Demarinis has applied for an easement on parcel 051550, or 5550, which is a small bow-shaped orphan parcel adjacent to the M553 corridor in South Marquette. The purpose of the easement is to facilitate vehicular ingress and egress to and from his property that lies directly to the east of the small parcel. Mr. Demarinis presented a request to purchase a portion of the same parcel last summer. However, the Planning Commission voted not to recommend selling the property and instead recommended that the City Commission consider an easement as a more appropriate measure. The complete property sale request files and relevant excerpts from the September 6, 2011 Planning Commission meeting minutes are included here for examination. Fiscal effect, none. Staff has determined that an easement is a viable method for realizing full development potential of the adjacent property. Recommendation, concur with the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve an easement. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, just a point of procedure. Typically, if an easement is approved, that has to be prepared, and normally it says direct the city attorney to prepare the easement, just since it is my function. So you might want to add that to the recommendation if you do a motion.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners? Commissioner Nemi?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we concur with the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve an easement and direct the city attorney to draft the appropriate document.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have support? Commissioner St. Ange?
Support.
Okay. Commissioner Nemi, any questions?
Nothing further.
Commissioner St. Ange?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Anything else? Seeing none, all in favor, say yes.
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 Opposed? That's easy. All right. Number 9, report and recommendation from the city manager regarding bids for street improvements, bituminous paving, and sanitary sewer lateral replacements. City clerk?
Yes, Your Honor. Background, the City of Marquette's approved capital improvement plan for FY 2011-2012 has prioritized streets that are in need of heavy and preventative maintenance activities to extend the life of the asphaltic concrete pavement structure. The 2.9 miles of proposed heavy maintenance activities, which include milling, thin overlays, curb repairs, and removal of undesirable materials, will increase the surface life of the street by 12 to 15 years and thus prolong the need for complete street structure reconstruction. The preventative maintenance activities include the crack sealing of 4.7 miles of street. The crack sealing will prolong street life by 3 or more years before any heavy maintenance or additional preventative maintenance activities are required. A bid package was created to address priorities for heavy and preventative maintenance in our capital improvement plan and to replace those sanitary sewer Orangeburg laterals that reside in that same area of roadway. A listing of these street locations along with project location maps have been attached for your review. In addition to the previously mentioned projects, 2 projects, Mountain Street and Garfield Avenue, both funded in FY 2011-2012, were included in this bid to take advantage of the competitive bidding process and the savings that is obtained by larger projects. These 2 streets consist of street upgrades due to the poor street structure condition and areas of inadequate curbing. The bids for the project were open on June 14, 2012. 3 contractors responded to our request for bids. The results are summarized below. The engineer's estimate for the project was $1,333,509.55. Payne and Dolan had the low bid meeting specifications at $1,228,642.70. Tabulation and checking of the bids found one error. Fiscal effect, the FY 2011-2012 budget for the street improvements bituminous paving part of the project was set at $800,000, and the low bid came in at $675,989.10. The Mountain Street and Garfield Avenue projects were budgeted at $351,000, and the low bid came in at $248,127.85. The sanitary sewer lateral replacement part of the project has sufficient funds from 3 different accounts to cover the low bid that came in at $304,525.95. These projects are scheduled to be part of the bond issue for the FY 2011-2012 projects. Recommendation: award a contract for bids for street improvements, bituminous paving, and sanitary sewer lateral replacements to Payne and Dolan Incorporated in the amount of $1,228,642.70 at the unit prices bid. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
All right, thank you. Commissioners? Commissioner DePietro?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we go with the recommendation just read by our city clerk.
Thank you. Do we have support? Commissioner Ryan?
I'll support the motion.
Commissioner DePietro, any additional comments?
Just that Payne and Dolan's been working with the city for many, many years, and do not believe they had any problems or any questions from any of the departments because of their outstanding work. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ryan?
Project's the low bidder and within budget.
Seeing no other hands up, all in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 10, Commissioner Nemi, you had asked to have this added to the agenda, discussion on zoning change regarding the homeless shelter.
Yes, Your Honor. I did send out a email to all commissioners. There was a request from the Room at the Inn Board to request an amendment to the zoning ordinance. The Room at the Inn is a 501c3 corporation, which is looking at purchasing a church, which is at the corner of 3rd and Ridge. It's in the CBD. There is no provision in the zoning ordinance at this point for a homeless shelter. The facility wouldn't be used as a home to actually house the homeless on a continuing basis, only on an occasional basis, but it would be used as a warming center during the season of the shelter, which is September through May. What they're requesting is that we petition the Planning Commission to amend the ordinance to define homeless shelters and allow it in the CBD and other appropriate districts. And I have a motion if no one has any questions, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We also have Helen McCormick here from the Room at the Inn, one of the founders, to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Commissioner Ryan?
I just have a question. I am certainly in support of the Room at the Inn, and is this the best way to approach this? I mean, are we kind of opening the door to things we're not aware of by doing it in this way, or that's my only concern?
Yeah, I don't think so. What we'll be doing is petitioning the Planning Commission, and certainly they will be going over the request in detail. They'll have to hold a public hearing, and it'll have to come back to us, and we'll have to hold a public hearing on the amendment.
Okay.
Right. You've got a motion, Bob?
Yes. I move that the City Commission petition the Planning Commission for an amendment to the zoning ordinance to include the definition of a homeless shelter and inclusion as an approved use in the Central Business District and other appropriate districts, and that a recommendation be returned to the City Commission last meeting in July, but no later than the first meeting in August.
All right. We have support by Commissioner DePietro. Commissioner Nemi, anything further?
Nothing further, unless there's any questions. I'd be happy to answer them, or perhaps Ms. McCormick could.
Additional comments? Commissioner St. Ange?
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have, at least I don't think I have any qualms with the approach, but it seems a little odd to me that we would go this route to get this issue in front of the Planning Commission as a formal action of the commission, and what weight does that carry then to the Planning Commission? I guess I would ask the manager or staff their opinion, I guess, of this approach, and can we accomplish the same thing without a formal action of the commission?
I'm looking at Ron because this is kind of a legal question. Like the hot potato approach.
I was looking at you because it's a zoning question. But
Well, you know, in terms of zoning, if you're asking the direction given, you know, for the planning commission, I think obviously the city commission can direct the work of the planning commission. The planning commission is a board appointed by the city commission, which is probably the legal answer that Ron is going to give you. But I would kind of, if I could, probably note that, you know, consider allowing it in the CBD. Is probably the prescriptive term to use, because the planning commission is going to need to take a look at this and determine whether the central business district is in fact appropriate, or if it would be appropriate in another district. I think that's kind of the verbiage of direction would be. I see probably the concern on that. I don't know if Ron has anything to add or Bill does.
I guess my concern was similar to Commissioner St. Ange, only in the sense that what is the best vehicle to get this accomplished, and then listening to Dennis say that maybe asking the Planning Commission to consider it, even though they're, you know, appointed by this commission, they're an independent body, and we know from past practice and experience they don't always perhaps agree with the commission in any event, but yeah, the best vehicle, if this is the best vehicle, so be it. I just don't know the answer. It just came up tonight, and I haven't really thought about it.
Commissioner Nemi?
I guess some of the rationale of it originating here is that I am involved as a volunteer with Room at the Inn, and in reviewing this zoning ordinance to initiate a zoning amendment, the Room at the Inn runs basically on a shoestring, and there is no fee if it's a petition of the commission or the planning commission. I think it would probably be inappropriate for me to appear to the planning commission requesting them to make such a thing and or such an amendment. And I guess secondarily, the reason we're looking at as an improved use in the CBD, the current property is located in the CBD, and it's if we were to seriously be able to purchase the property, we would have to have an amendment to the zoning ordinance that the property would be no use for us.
Commissioner St. Ange?
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess my follow-up question was going to be to staff, given the context of the motion, is this something that the Planning Commission can effectively vet by the end of July or the first meeting in August?
We'll certainly provide that direction to them. And
I mean, I don't know what they have on their slate, and is this, again,
honestly, the planning commission has a lot of projects on their plate, and this is not going to break the back. They've been busy for years, and we will do our best to support it as best we can.
Okay. Commissioner Ryan?
I think one reason why it might come before this board is because this is bigger than a zoning issue. I think it's a social issue in our community that needs to be dealt with. I'm not directly involved with this organization, but I'm aware of the work they do. I know there are a number of churches in this community that make this work through hundreds of volunteers. I know we have people in our community who need this service, and you know, that's something we have to be somewhat aware of and conscious of, and that is part of our mission, to make sure that we have a community that is caring. And so I think although it comes down as a zoning issue, it's really a social issue, and I think that's the reason for the urgency. And as Commissioner Nemi pointed out, it's a specific project they're looking at. They have a building available which is now somewhat used for this purpose, and they would like to acquire it and use it going forward. And I think they're trying to be up and up and not violate zoning ordinances in the process.
City manager first.
Thank you, Your Honor. Only pointing out that I think the concern you're hearing from staff and from city attorney is that the city commission in Marquette has supremacy. So in tasking a subordinate commission, you are in effect putting in a position where they're already going to be charged with coming back with a recommendation that you may agree with or overrule in and of this board yourself. And so by not taking that action now, having the specificity that those subordinate board members are looking for, to have the freedom to deliberate independently and come back with what in their view would be the best recommended solution. To Commissioner St. Ange's original question, it just makes it a little bit more complicated for them to keep all of those independent views as opposed to something that would have come forward from the community. But I think Commissioner Ryan has pointed out that this is something that the City Commission feels speaks to a public good for the entire community. So I think that we're going to be covered by this action being forwarded in the manner proposed.
Commissioner St. Ange?
Thank you, Your Honor. I disagree again with other members of the commission. I don't view this as being a social issue. This is an issue of process. And we are compelled to follow the process that the city has enacted and to jump the gun on this request and put it into a process and preempt everything else that's ongoing. We wouldn't do this in any other case, and perhaps with all the best of intentions, if this wasn't an issue that involved some members of the commission, we wouldn't be hearing this. We wouldn't be going through this process. I certainly do not disagree with the intent and the benefit going forward, but it is not a question of social good. It is a question of process, and that is our obligation, is one of process when it comes to this. Hence my questions, and I'm not comfortable moving it to the Planning Commission and telling them to take this issue up and put everything else on the back burner.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
I will support Commissioner St. Ange because I do believe that process is important. I believe that while all of the good that the organization does, and that is undoubted, and we can only but speak accolades of what they do, I don't see any compelling reason for us to have to do what the motion is. I think the better source or the better procedure is the process that every other citizen or citizen group or business would use, which is to the Planning Commission, up from the Planning Commission, and we take action from it. I do feel strongly for that.
Well, I'm going to support the motion. I guess I understand the angle you're taking from process, but this is a group that takes our recommendations and comes back to us. I believe they can look at this independently and come back to us with an honest recommendation. I think that many times when we're sitting up here, we're forced to do things, whether it's for a developer's timetable, whether it's timeliness for a grant application. We do things expedited sometimes. In this case, it's obvious that they're trying to, their goal is to move this up so that they can use this during the months where they really need it. I don't have an issue with it. Commissioner Schneider?
Just a question on process. This is an ordinance change, and I'm wondering, do we actually have to go through the Planning Commission? I don't want to sidestep our Planning Commission and their role, but legally, do we actually need to go through the Planning Commission to make this change?
Yes, we do. There is a process, and we're not overriding the process, but I think we have to go to the Planning Commission. I guess what I was saying earlier is it's not so much that we shouldn't do this, it's just the terminology. I thought Dennis's terminology of asking the Planning Commission to consider this rather than ordering them to do something made more sense. But no, I think we need to go to the Planning Commission. I don't think we should overstep that part of it. And as I'm listening to Dennis, he says that he thinks they can meet this deadline that Bob is looking for. So I think we don't really need to, to abbreviate this process to accomplish what apparently the goal is here.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'd be willing to amend my motion to include the word consider inclusion in there.
The motion hasn't been restated yet by the chair, so if the second accepts that change in wording, then we don't have to go through the amendment process.
Does the second accept that word? Do you consider?
Yes, Your Honor. I
Okay.
accept that word change.
All right. Any other comments? All in favor, say yes.
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 Opposed? It's Commissioner St. Ange and Stonehouse that were the nays. All right. Last item, number 12, report and recommendation from the city manager regarding fiscal year 11-12 year-end budget adjustment. City clerk?
Yes, Your Honor, background. On May 9th, 2011, the City Commission adopted a General Appropriations Act, which provided for all city expenditures for the 2011-12 fiscal year. As part of the normal fiscal year-end procedures, a budget adjustment is prepared in an attempt to keep the city's budget in compliance with various state laws and regulations. The attached schedule shows the proposed budget adjustment that will close out the current fiscal year. Most of the adjustments are due to projects being carried forward from the FY 2010-11 year and for items approved during the fiscal year 2011-2012 that were not originally budgeted for, such as grants and the sale of property. Fiscal effect, per the attached schedules, all spending should conclude on or under budget. It is anticipated that an additional $300,000 will be collected above budget forecast in the general fund due to EVIP. Recommendation, approve the proposed budget adjustment. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner DePietro?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we approve the proposed budget adjustment.
Support. Commissioner Stonehouse?
I support the motion.
Thank you. Commissioner DePietro?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. Commissioner Stonehouse?
Question for the city manager. This obviously is a real piece of good news, how close we've come to the budget and being able to hit the mark on that. And I wonder if you could comment on that.
Thank you. I'd love to, but we have our CFO sitting in the back of the room who sat there patiently till the last agenda item. I'd like him to give us an update.
I will accept his expertise.
Welcome, Gary.
Thank you. Really, you're much too kind. I was perfectly happy sitting back there. But it is very good news. It just goes to show that we have a very dedicated group of department heads and staff, and even you as commissioners, we take your direction very seriously, and it just shows that we are staying within the guidelines that you give us, and it's very good news that we were able to accomplish this year with an extra, what we anticipate to be an extra $300,000 through the EVIP program. And we hope that continues into the next fiscal year as well.
Right.
So
Thank you.
That's all I have. So.
Any direct questions for Gary before we let him sit back down?
Just one.
Okay.
If Gary, if we didn't have the EVIP, would we be slightly under budget?
We probably would have been pretty close to break even without that. If you factor in, we did have some property sales that, but that's going to go towards the Heartwood Forest Land debt reduction. So even with that, we probably would have been very close to break even, at least from what I'm seeing as of today. So.
Thanks, Gary. Any additional comments? Seeing none, all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Comments should be limited to 5 minutes per person. Anyone wishing to comment, please state your name and address for the record.
Frank Jeff Barito, 350 East Ridge, Marquette. These are my opinions. May 14th, you were given a summary of the timeline which led to the bog restoration project at Presque Isle Park. City officials had assured us the timeline would reveal that plenty of public notice and opportunity were offered. Well, the research as laid upon the May 14th record refutes that assertion. Last May, we were given a flimsy excuse just to bide your time in hopes the matter would just go away, which it would have had one person not analyzed the timeline and alleged that inadequate notice was given. The Bog project was always an afterthought of the McClellan extension. So the manner in which you carried out the excavation remains under challenge. Now, all that time spent on the research and no decency of a response. As always, when you've lost an argument, you go silent and move on to your next agenda. Months ago, Mr. St. Ange challenged my credibility on land use issues to the point of suggesting we take the matter outside. He's ignored a wealth of land use information for years. If he wishes to contest anything, it's all written chronologically and is quite easy to access and to verify on public record. Mr. St. Ange was asked which land use opinions he'd taken such issue with and what difference one's level of expertise makes as compared to what matters is the substance of the actual suggestion. Again, a member is caught judging based upon who people are instead of on the validity of what they say. None of Mr. St. Ange's tirade addressed any issue. The canceled Citadel project on Blaker Street helps explain further. Our area's foremost land use expert, who's chaired our planning commission, actually favored the tower, squeezed in appearance and all. He deemed it more important to reside people closer to the central city than to protect the entrance to our historic district. I fully favor his concept, but not at such blatant expense. That whole property is historic right down to the southeast corner. Approving such an atrocity was foolish land use planning by both commissions. The lesson learned is we've seen how a well-meaning land use expert, and he is an expert, let his personal cause to get people living downtown take precedence over the wider land use picture. Then another member of the planning board voted to approve the structure that he had every alleged intention of bidding on, and he was in fact seen leaving the building. On May 14th, Mr. Stonehouse blamed the Citadel debacle on the Planning Commission not acting in a timely fashion. That doesn't remove any responsibility off your collective shoulders. One of you suggested the commission couldn't do anything to stop it. Well, please learn from your mistakes and find a way to stop it. Be proactive once and have protective measures in place ahead of time. For example, slopes ordinances. Thanks to your years of inaction, we now have an eyesore just south of our East Michigan Street Trail down to the beach. You're out to a shaky start on hardwood with your 3 times excessive sale of public land to the landfill. You approved a building on Lakeshore and Crescent that's taller than the recommended maximum height, and now you've sealed what remained of our lake view from the roundabout. You answered your 2 earlier mistakes with a third. The ramifications of this lost opportunity, lost under your legacies, will linger for decades. These excessive heights aren't even necessary. You and your children's views will be blocked for the rest of their lives so a handful of families can have vaulted ceilings. That's not worth the sacrifice. And new digging is visible from Picnic Rocks on the Lakeshore site, right where the east boundary bows into the boulevard. We'll see what impact any homes there create and what sort of landscaping techniques can hide them. May 14th, 2 members used the rationale that what they'd approved was better than what was there. That mentality is flawed for reasons on record. You don't approve a less than ideal land use on the notion that it's better than what was there. Our Lakeshore deserves better. Anyone who takes issue with these comments is asked to discuss the specifics of what bothers them out of the large sampling of land use items you've heard tonight. Only 1 current member has voted against the exploitation of our scenic and historic views. Remember, these comments demonstrate my love for Marquette, while you're the ones who endeavor to change it to something different, more glitzy, less friendly, higher crime, more traffic, which we've already begun to see since all this glitz began about 10 years ago.
Thank you, Mr. Veritol. Anyone else wishing to comment? Seeing none, we will move to comments from city commissioners. We'll start with my left, Commissioner Ryan, or Nemi, excuse me.
I have nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you. Commissioner Schneider.
Well, I did have a few things, but my first question was going to be directed at Mr. Stackwitz, who unfortunately isn't with us this evening, so I'll get him on the next time. I do want to call commissioners' attention as well as the public's attention to something that I started about 6 months ago, maybe 8. I've started hosting roundtable discussions with citizens of Marquette so that I can try and get a better understanding of what concerns people, as well as trying to explain how the city itself operates. What is the commission? What is the city manager? What is the city charter? All of these things. It's had some pretty good turnout. It's had some really good discussion. And I'm hosting another one this coming Monday at the Ordoc from 5 to 8 p.m. They're closed during that time, but they're opening the doors for us to be able to meet. And I want to encourage people who are not on Facebook, because that's how I usually communicate, who are not on Facebook, that I'll be having that time slot open. And this one is actually targeted. It's a specific discussion on trying to define sustainability. As the master plan revision is moving forward, it seems like there are a lot of initial comments coming in about sustainability in all sorts of fashions. Unfortunately, sustainability is a word that is really, really hard to define, and it's kind of touchy-feely. And I feel as a commissioner, this is kind of the best way to reach out and try and understand what the community thinks sustainability really is. So I encourage no more than 2 other commissioners to show up if they're interested. But if there's anybody at home watching from the public who would like to come, please do come by. I'd love to talk to you.
Thank you. Commissioner St. Ange?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Commissioner Stonehouse?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of quick things. Someday I'm dreaming that the bike path around the new hotel will actually open. That has been an ongoing dream for a long time. And as of yesterday, it still was not. And I see no active work being done there on any possible activity that could impact the opening of that path. So what I would encourage the city to make some phone calls and see if we can't get that to happen finally. I'm being a little irritating there, but I see that as property belonging to the city of Marquette, to the people of Marquette, and the access to that waterfront is very important to all of us, especially certainly as the weekend is coming on, the big holiday, 4th of July, and again, I'm encouraging the city if we can make some calls and try and get that finally opened up. Interesting discussion by the co-op tonight, I thought, on food hubs and how that impacts all of us. That really is something going on kind of sub-radar for many people. If you're only getting your food from the big markets, I think you're missing what's happening on the smaller scale and perhaps even the more important scale. You know, we see the farmers market, and that's only just the tip of the iceberg of what's happening there. And all of the good food that's coming into the co-op and out of the co-op, a whole different variety of opportunities and substances and products that really is forming part of that food hub that's occurring around Marquette. We need to get smarter on it as a commission, I think. We need to get smarter on it as citizens, and we need to understand it to see if we can't use it to I think, all of our advantage. And by our advantage, I mean our advantage as citizens and as a city. Other than that, Mr. Mayor, nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ryan?
Well, I'm sure we all could have said something about the fact we had a lot of Model A's running around Marquette, and I'm sure as the car man, the mayor will add something to that. But I just wanted to say I have talked to several business people, and they were really impressed with the people who were here. They had an opportunity to meet them in restaurants and other businesses, and it seemed that the people who were here were impressed by our community too. So it was a great event. I think it's also great to see what's happening in Marquette. The proposal by Viridia Group, the proposal tonight by the Food Co-op. I'm not sure what all is in store for us, but Tom Veer and Bob Martin with the Delph Theater. You know, people are investing in our community, and that's really pretty exciting. And these are major investments. They're in downtown. I know sometimes Jason and I don't always see eye to eye on what sustainability might mean, but I think the more we can get people living and working in Marquette, the better off we are for everybody. So there you go.
Thank you. Commissioner DePietro.
Thank you, Your Honor. Getting back to Commissioner Stonehouse's comment on the bike path going around the hotel. Looking at it today, it looked like they were just kind of finishing up the sod and landscape in that area. So it looks like by Wednesday or Thursday, the fence will be down. That area will be paved and open to the public all the way through to the boardwalk. So they're just finishing up some loose ends, and they'll have that area paved this weekend, or this week, I mean. And then there's a couple city employees that are retiring this month, and on Friday, June 22nd, Jim Miner of the engineering department retired after 24 years of service, starting in 1988. So, anyways, congratulations to Jim Miner for on his retirement. And then effective June 29th, City Hall building custodian Ellie Koliak will retire. Ellie was hired March 91, and after 21 years of service of keeping the City Hall looking clean and green, Ellie will have time to enjoy many of her activities. Again, we congratulate Jim and Ellie on their retirements. And also, I don't want to take too much away from, I know the mayor's going to be talking on this Model A Club of America and National Convention. Members that came to the Upper Peninsula, Marquette County, with over 300 models. So we had owners from 37 states and one from New Zealand and some from Canada. But the communities in Marquette County and the UP were just in awe over seeing all these beautiful cars traveling in parades and from city to city. So I thank everybody for putting this together the last couple years and bringing it here. One of the things that when you're talking to these people, that when they hold these Model A American National Conventions in big cities, a lot of people don't even pay attention to them. But when they were here in the UP, Marquette County, they were like celebrities because everybody wanted to talk to them and look at their cars up close. So very well done for all the people that put this together. And one last thing is I'd like to thank Public Works Superintendent Scott Convenzi on having our local streets, major streets and business road traffic lanes striped and painted. I had received many calls and talked to people in and around town how impressed they are with Public Works getting it done early this year. It looks like a much greater grade of paint being used, and they really think that's a good idea to get it done this early. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Well, I'm going to talk briefly, as you would guess, on the Model A convention, because I am kind of a car guy. I've got a 21 Model T in my garage restored, and someday I'd like to move up to something newer, like a Model A. It'd be perfect. You know, it was a great event for the whole area, but a citizen brought something up to me today that I thought was pretty interesting, that when we have these big events in Marquette, we always talk about the impact on the area and the businesses, but this was an event where you could really see what that impact was. When you drove by restaurants, you could see who those people were. When you drove by the hotels, you could see who was staying there. I mean, it was very visible to see at gas stations, at stores, at convenience stores, where they were. So I think, you know, that's an interesting thought that I hadn't considered. But looking back on the week, we saw these cars everywhere. And where they were spending money. So that was great. The Marquette Mountain Mud Run was a huge success. I was out there for a little bit. I heard they had upwards of 400 people at this event for a first-year event. The Scandinavian Midsummer Festival at Presque Isle Saturday, the Family Carnival from Child and Family Services. A lot of good things happening in this community this past week. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the Marquette Bike Jam, first annual, kicking off Friday. If you have any questions, mqtbikejam.com, go to and help support it. So that's all I've got, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. Only to mention that we'll be prompt in our responses for any questions that we left open from this evening. Also, to remind people, tomorrow out at the Pavilion at Presque Isle, starting at 5 o'clock, we're going to have the barbecue pit up and fired up, please bring your own, whatever you want to eat, whatever you'd like to drink. But as part of the ongoing master plan process, we've heard it many times this evening. We've heard it, of course, through the process already. Our waterfront is the premier element that people focus on when they think of Marquette. And tomorrow we're going to have a meeting of all the interested community groups that do things on our waterfront. We'd like to hear from residents to help us rationalize the priorities that we hear as we move that process into the master plan. So please, if you have time tomorrow, come out 5 o'clock tomorrow. You might find a new group, something that you're interested in, but we'd certainly like to hear from you about what you'd like to see going on our waterfront. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we're adjourned.